Next Level Coach at Summit Funding. And today I've gotten to introduce her twice, but she already knows she's my favorite. Today I'd like to share the story that I get to share about Robyn LaVassaur, the greatest lesson she ever taught me. 3 years ago, I looked up on my coaching roster and saw Robyn LaVassaur was my coach. And I got excited because I was going to tell her everything that was wrong with my world. So about 6 o'clock at night, she calls me and she starts off with the words, "Hi, honey." Now, most people would think "Hi, honey" was a nice way to start. No, Jonas took it as tell Robyn everything that's wrong with your life, everything that's wrong with my business partner, and everything wrong with my business. An hour later, Robyn humbly sat through the grocery store and her drive home and said 2 things to me that were so powerful. The first word she says to me is, "You done?" Then she comes back and she says, "Honey, you can do that to me at any time." She goes, "But you have to bring a solution with you next time." She goes, "You bring me a problem." She goes, "You better bring me a solution." And she goes, "Jonas, I want you to use that in your family with your kid." She goes, "I want you to use it in your business." And she goes, "I want you to use it in your relationship and watch all 3 grow." Robyn, you just went through the toughest thing I have ever faced in my life with me. And I use that every time somebody's come with me. It's, "Guys, I know the problem. Bring me the solution." And Robyn, I can't thank you enough. This situation has been so much easier that I use that every step of the way. Guys, you all know her as the mom boss. You know how much I put her on a pedestal. Probably the greatest real estate speaker I have ever seen. Our EVP of Sales, Robyn LaVassaur.
Well, follow that. Thank you, my friend. Obviously love Jonas and love talking to all of you. My only wish is that we were in one big gigantic room together, because what a difference it makes to be a live audience and spend some time together. But I'm hoping that we can still make this somewhat interactive today. And so if somebody in each room is able to unmute at any given time, I would love the opportunity to have some possibly live dialogue or information from you, because not only do we learn hopefully a lot from a speaker, I hope even more we learn from one another, because you guys are the boots on the ground doing that work every single day. And I think the more interactive and possibly even vulnerable that we get, the more that we get to grow in these kind of situations. So that's a really big win. I'm honored to be here. Why and how? Why in the world is a loan officer, if you will, teaching real estate communication and client communication to better that experience overall? Well, I will tell you that I believe that we are all in sales. And so really big deal, you guys, we are all in sales. Hear the word and get comfortable with that word. It is okay to be in sales. For me, every time I say the word sales, I translate it in my brain to the word serve. I translate it into my brain with the word serve. Why? Because then it makes me want to do a boatload of it, because I love to serve. It's one of my triggers. I absolutely love to know that I made a difference to other people. And so sales for me, serving, that makes me energetic and wanting to do it. When we hear the word sales otherwise, I'm going to assume a lot of you are just like I was about 12 years ago in the business, that was, I don't like to be in sales. I really like helping people. I had all of these reasons, if you will, beautiful excuses as to why I wasn't running the business of my dreams. And once I got those all out of the way, I literally started creating the business that I always knew that I ultimately was capable of. And so I want to walk you through some of that today. I want to talk about the 4 different places. It's actually 5 technically. 5 different places, and hopefully if anybody disagrees, feel free to put it in the chat if you want to add anything, but these are broad categories. And I want to walk through the 5 different areas in which you interact and serve a client. The very first one is prospecting. So let's start with prospecting. This is the one that we like to do the least of, and yet we really want to skip to sets 2 and 3. And then we struggle, if you will, with step 1, step 2, and ultimately step 4 and often step 5. So I'm going to walk you through all of them. So again, we're good with step 3 and 4. So I'll walk you through all of them. So number 1 is prospecting. Number 2 is, when you are prospecting, we are looking for what? The answer would be lead. When we're prospecting, we're looking for a lead, somebody who wants to do something with real estate, buy or sell. So we're going to jump in and look for that lead. Step 3 is conversion, meaning you're now talking to that lead and we're trying to figure out how to get them to be an actual active buyer pursuing a home or an active seller willing to list their home, right? We're going to go to number 4, and that's closing, right? Once they convert and they've become a transaction, excuse me, did I skip number 3? Did I skip number 3 just now? Let me go through it again. Prospecting, then a lead, then we're going to work on the conversion, right? Once we've converted them, that's a transaction. So we're in transaction mode at conversion. Then we're going to go to closing, everybody's favorite part, right? CTC. And then the very last is creating a past client / referral source. Now, throughout this entire process, every single person that you are interacting with, the same person's going through this chain with you. And if you're lucky, they will go through it with you as their realtor 3 or 4 different times in their lifetime. Not only that, but they should refer every single time you interact with them. There should be a potential referral at each stage at a minimum, let's call it 1 or 2, 50% of the time that you end up with referrals from them on each transaction they do with you. Now, if you're doing any sort of math in your head, you would look at, hey, if I have one client that goes all the way through prospecting, lead, conversion, closing, past client, and during that process, they refer me 2 people, and then they themselves turn over as a client again. Estimated math on that, you guys, if you're really doing it, you're looking at possibly 3 transactions for that one client and then referrals, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we'll add 6 to it over the lifetime. That would equal 9 total opportunities that begins with 1 prospecting call. 1 prospecting call. What's average commission? Can you guys put in the chat average commission? I know we're all over the country right now. Let's put average commission in the chat for realtors. And don't be shy, you guys. This is a really good thing, right? We all go to work every single day, and it always cracks me up in real estate and lending. People like, I just love loans and I love to help people. And every time I'm like, are you going to do it for free? And they're like, probably not. Maybe not full time, right? Thank you, Sean, for putting one in the chat. 12K average commission. Who else has got some? 10K, 10K, 12K, 20 to 30K, even prettier, right? That can be a good and a bad, right? Tracy Wheeler, it can be a good and a bad. You get a big check and then you tend to maybe not work it from there. So 6K, okay, perfect. Daniel's just a K, okay, 7K, I like it. So let's call it on average, we'll land at that 12K. It's a good average in the group. So we'll land at that 12,000. We're gonna take 12,000 times 9, which is a low opportunity. And that's to say that each prospect could lead to $100,000+ in income. Each prospect could lead to $100,000 over time in income. Some more, some less. Is that fair? Now, here's what I want to ask you for a minute. I want you to think to yourself, do I communicate? Do I serve at a level that says to me, there is both, yes, there's other value besides economic, but we're going to talk economics right now. Is there value here that I am showing them, the honor, the overall service, the value in what they're doing? They understand I'm the professional. Is there $100,000+ worth of it? Am I doing it? Am I communicating at that level? I say all of that, you guys, because my answer personally was no. My answer personally was no. So about 12 years ago, I shifted that and I went from closing around 5 deals a month as a lender on average to literally averaging over 30 units consistently a month. And my biggest year ever being 600+ units. It was Mortgage Disneyland. So we'll say my average years were becoming the sum of around 400 units a year. And the biggest key to it was the shift in my own communication and my knowledge, if you will, of walking through each one of these steps with each client and understanding the value of what I did every single day and how I could bring value to other people. So I want to talk about each one. So let's start with the prospecting. Some of you guys have heard me speak about the Power 5 plan. How many of you guys, just show of hands in each room, and then we'll put averages on the screen. How many of you guys actually make 5 outbound calls a day with the intention of telling people that you are a realtor and you want to be their realtor? Now, there'll be other conversation that takes place, but you're at least doing that 5 outbound calls every single day. How many people? You put some in the chat. How many people can keep their hand up? 5 outbound calls a day. This could be any service, you guys, whether it's lending, real estate, any of those things. Like, people are looking for value, and what we think in our service is that when we have our name on Facebook, when we have our name on Instagram, when we have a billboard up, when we have, we attend a couple functions, that people should call us if they need us, which couldn't be farther from the truth. So making those outbound calls, I'm not seeing any. So maybe it's a 0 for everybody. I'm going to make a bold assumption and say that it might be a 0. I will tell you the start of this is prospecting. So at the very top, I want you to write, I will do 5 outbound calls a day, and we're going to talk about what to say. 5 outbound calls a day. We're going to talk about what to say and who to call. What to say and who to call. I want this to be super interactive, you guys, so that you get some really strong tactics. And then my hope, if out of everything that we go over right now, is that you implement at least this. This one will feel like the simplest, but not the easiest. And it will be the most avoided activity, but it could change every single one of your lives as a real estate agent and or as a lender. All my loan officers listening, if you were to do this activity. Okay. So we're gonna make 5 outbound calls a day. We're gonna have the process of finding a need and filling a need on those phone calls. It is okay to disarm people during those conversations. They can look something like this, where you might introduce yourself. Hey, it's Robyn. I'll say it's over at ABC Realty, right? Hey, I have to tell you, it's been a long time since we've been in touch. I apologize for that. I'm actually calling for a couple things today, and then we're going to talk, right? So we might go into asking some questions about their life, how things are going. This could be everything in real estate, you guys, from past clients to past leads that maybe never converted. The easiest place to start, I find, is if you go into your actual iPhone and you bring up lists. If you're in an iPhone, if you're in an Android or any other type of phone, I apologize. I haven't worked anything else for a lot of years, so I only know the iPhone. But if you go into contacts and then to lists in your iPhone, top left corner, so go into your contacts, up at the top, it should say lists. Click that thing on lists, and then you can look at how many contacts you have, how many contacts in your phone that you have. Put some numbers in the chat. How many contacts? Call in your room. Engage in your rooms for a minute and find out how many contacts are in your phone. 1357, 3190, 4279, 1482. That's crazy. That's so good. Now, if you scrolled through even the first 40 A's, how many of those people have you talked to with the intent of serving them? How many people have you talked to with the intent of serving them in your top 40 A's? And then if you have the intent in serving them, how many of them have you talked to in the last 30 days? And I'm going to give you a tactic real quick. There'll be several times during this where I say, write this down. I say that because I'm one of those people that listens to a podcast and I listen to it 5 times and take notes so that I don't just listen, I learn. And we learn through repetition. We learn through taking notes. We learn, right, through future engagement. How many times have you guys watched a movie? You've watched the whole movie and then you watch it a second time and you think you've got it memorized and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that part. Our attention spans aren't super great, folks. Like, they just aren't. And so when we then can go listen or watch it again, we're like, oh, I just got a different aha, right? Different frame of mind, different space where I heard that a little differently. So there's a big one there. Okay, so we're going to take our list. Now, how many out of those A's have you been in contact with? The reason I bring it up, and this is the write it down part, people forget about you every 21 days. People forget about you every 21 days. Now, does that mean that any of us aren't special? Doesn't mean that. You are special. For sure, you are special. However, so is your client or future client, and so it is your job to be the one reaching out. Wouldn't it be beautiful if that's how medical care worked these days, right? If all those people reached out to us and took care of us because we were the patient and we wanted to get the best advice and the best information, all of those things. But no, like many industries, they wait for the phone to ring and for somebody to need them before they actually reach out. What a difference it would be if we reached out first, right? We're trying to be the opposite of that. We're trying to be the ones that reach out and stay engaged. So we're going to start with the prospecting. We're going to make phone calls. If you don't have a list that you need to work off of, start with the A's in your phone. You just found a huge piece of it. I mean, look at all these big, big, big numbers, you guys. And it's a great time to clean out contacts while you're doing it. So we call that a 2X. You can do 2 activities at one time and dial out. So let's say I'm going to go through a couple scripts on this in the prospecting world. And ironically, this will take us through what you would say in step 5 of this entire thing as well, which is past client / referral source when the client lands in that bucket. So right now they're a prospect, and they're a prospect that we're hoping to find a lead. Is it fair to say that every human being on the planet needs shelter? Is that a fair statement? Is it fair to say that the best kind of shelter is one that they own? Is that a fair statement? Everybody believe in that? We all believe in the product we're selling? Okay, so if we believe in that, it would be a very wise decision to understand that every person on the planet is a prospect. Every person. I cannot tell you how many Uber drivers I have gotten phone calls or referrals from in every state that I travel to, speaking or meeting with branches and those kind of things. I cannot tell you how many people I've gotten a lead from having a conversation because everyone is interested. And I'll give you guys a little bit of an analogy. And then this is one of my favorites. I spent years not speaking about what I did for a living. And then I started to speak a little bit about what I did for a living, but I never connected the two, that I wanted to be their exact lender, right? I wanted to be somebody that added value to them in all things lending. And that's one of the things that I love to say and do is all things lending. I still to this day have clients message me, do you have somebody that replaces flooring? Do you have somebody that does plumbing? Do you know of a pool guy? Do you know, what about this? Oftentimes, can you give me a real estate recommendation? Now, here's what's funny. They became a client because initially they worked with who? A realtor. But they want a recommendation. Why? Because people forget about people every 21 days. Does that make sense? And so they're going to go back to a source. Oh, I didn't even know they were still doing real estate. I hear that all the time. I hear it all the time, you guys. It's actually shocking to me and a little sad for how hard we all are working. Why not get a little more intentional with how we do that work? So prospecting, we're going to reach out to people. If we haven't talked to them in a while and it's a past client, we're simply going to apologize that we haven't talked to them in a while. If you're brand new in the business, you're going to break the ice with simply a, hey, I'm really excited. I got into a new business, and this is the fun part about this, and it's real estate. Now, if you just became a gastroenterologist, you probably wouldn't dial your whole contact list and tell them all about it. Why? If you don't know that, if you're not 45, which is where I'm at in life, they do colonoscopies. So nobody asks the gastroenterologist how their day was, right? What was interesting about their day? Tell me all about it, right? What'd you see? What'd you learn? Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's doing it. But in real estate, you could literally say, I'm a realtor, I'm a lender. And people are like, oh, can we talk about rates? Can we talk about houses? Can we talk about market? Can we talk about prices? Can I complain to you? Can I ask you advice? There's so much there at any given moment. We have literally probably the greatest conversation starter industry on the planet in real estate and lending, because everyone is somewhat intrigued with what we do and what's going on in the current market. Is that a fair statement? The problem is we don't spend a lot of time in prospecting mode because we either separate work from like personal time in some way, or we are afraid to make the calls because we don't know who to call or what to say. So in that prospecting time, we're going to ask a whole bunch of questions. If you're a brand new realtor, you might say something like, hey, I got into real estate. I've loved it. And I literally am challenging myself to call every contact in my phone. I always say the truth will set you free. It also will make you feel more comfortable. So if you call with an agenda that is different than what it actually is, you will feel more uncomfortable delivering the information, and discomfort creates discomfort on the other side. Confidence creates confidence on the other side. Does that make sense? So whatever emotion you're feeling, you are conveying that through energy on the other phone, on the other line. Let me give you an example. I want you to close your eyes for a minute. Everybody close their eyes. I want you to imagine you're walking along and all of a sudden you're barefoot and you're talking and you step on a piece of glass and it's sharp and it cuts your foot. Now imagine it, and or you're walking along and you all of a sudden trip on a sidewalk and you fall hard. How many of you guys can feel it for a minute? You can feel it. Like, go to a place where you hurt yourself recently and imagine in your head and you can feel it. Like, I sliced my finger on a can of refried beans, no joke, and had to get stitches. To this day, when I open a can of anything, what does my brain tell me? Ouch. Be careful. Literally, the sirens go off. Why do I say that, you guys? Because people are either going to keep taking your phone call over and over again, or they're going to start avoiding you. And that's okay. It's how you learn whether or not your communication is valuable and people are intrigued to pick up on the other side. And discomfort creates discomfort. Confidence creates confidence. Does that make sense? That's how much we feel energy. And I think we dismiss that a little bit, whether or not we can feel it. If you call just with an agenda of getting something for you, we also can feel it. How many of you real estate agents, this is a great question, have felt like a lender has called you lately simply looking for a lead and only a lead? How many of you guys have gotten a phone call as real estate agents where you're like, I don't have anything. I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm not going to take that call today. Oftentimes it's because someone's looking for something that you might not have. And so that's a big deal. And so you're always looking instead to find a need and fill a need, right? So you might call that client and talk to them about being a brand new, or it might be a past client and you're going to talk to them about the house. I'm going to give you some questions to ask around the house and talking about what they've done. Okay. So how's the house? Tell me all about it, right? Tell me about the neighborhood, what you love. Is there anything you don't love about it? Everything that you ask. And this is a tactic that I hope that you guys will practice in the future, should be an open-ended question, which means work really hard on questions you ask people to not lead to a yes or no answer. Does that make sense? That's a yes or no question. Does that make sense? What's not? Tell me if you have any questions about what I just said. Do you see the difference there, you guys? When we're calling people, when we're talking to them, the more open-ended questions, if they can't land in a yes or a no, we're very lazy in our culture in general in communication. And so we tend to go quick, curt, to the point. Even if we really love somebody, we like to make things short and sweet, right? As to either not be inconvenienced, not to inconvenience them. We're just not super strong in our communication, which means open-ended questions lead to better conversations. Open-ended questions, right? Hey, tell me about where you're living right now. Oh, I'm living with a friend. I'm living with mom and dad, whatever the case. We're living in that house you sold us 3-4 years ago, whatever the case, right? We're going to talk about it in very open-ended questions. So I want to do a little bit of table work. I want you to write down 3 open-ended questions that you might ask somebody on a prospecting phone call. 3 open-ended questions that you'll ask somebody on a prospecting phone call. If it was a past client, you might write a couple down for them. If it's a future, hopefully a prospect, maybe it's friends and family that you've never done anything for in real estate that you'd like to. What are open-ended questions surrounding that you could ask them? Go ahead and write them down, and then we're going to share a few. And if you have a minute, either put some in the chat or somebody go ahead and raise their hand up and we can unmute you and have you share with everybody. Open-ended. Who's got one? Who's got some they can share? That's not a yes or a no question. That's an open-ended. Go ahead, Jonas. Start us off.
Sorry, I had to get it off mute. Do you know how much your house is worth?
Do you know how much your house is worth? That's a great past client. Now, the one thing I don't love about that is what?
It could be yes or no.
It's a yes or no.
Anybody else have one? Oh, how's your family? Is another one from the room.
How's your family? That's a great one, right? Like so I want us to replace the short words like how and why and those things and be a little more tell me about. Tell me about the house. Tell me about what you've seen in the neighborhood as far as real estate activity. Does that make sense? Why? Because it feels, is there a big difference there? Standardized question, right? How are you doing? Jonas, fill me in on your life. Do you see the difference, you guys? Now we go from, Jonas, how are you? What do you respond with?
Great.
Great. If I said, Jonas, I'm so glad that you picked up. Tell me about life. Fill me in.
You're going to get a lot more than one word.
You're going to respond me with great?
No.
No. We're going to talk a little bit, right? We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to start with being interested. How many of you guys realize, just as you're sitting thinking about this for a minute, how often we do short bouts of unintentional, unimpactful communication throughout the day? Now, it is required still, right? It's okay to pass through the hallways, walk through the grocery store, say hello, good to see you too, like really brief. What I would tell you is that your goal is to start with one magical conversation a day, one, even with a stranger, and work your way up to 5. And it will change your business and it will impact your life greatly. I promise you that, undoubtedly. Now, there's a lot of good questions here. I'm going to read some of them. What projects do you want to complete now that you have moved in? What projects do you want to complete right now that you've moved in? Oh, beautiful. And then there's opportunities to help. Hey, I could follow up with you on the plumber you just talked about or the future of this. I'll watch for some things. Hey, I know a few people. If you don't have an installer, I can help you with that. Let me be of value to you. Why? Because when somebody goes, gosh, Tracy just called me, offered me value, was interested in what I was doing, and then followed up with me. That's beautiful. And then it gives us a little more permission for the close to these phone calls. So really good, Tracy. What's the most important to you in this process? So right now they're a lead, Sean, but yes, you're 100% right. Throughout the thing, it might be somebody that you're talking to that has fears around buying or selling, right? Has fears. What makes you scared about buying or selling real estate? Right? What are some questions I can answer for you? Beautiful way to say things, right? Forces them into giving what those are. Really big. How do you like the neighborhood you're in? Huge one. How many of you guys have sold a house before to somebody? They think it's going to be their dream home and they get in and it turns out they don't like that neighborhood at all. I'm guilty of it. Just so you know, I bought a house, thought for sure it was our forever home and literally was like, about 4 months in, I was disenchanted with the neighborhood. It happens. We think sometimes that, oh, that client said they were going to be in there forever. So how do we up our level of communication once they say they're in their forever home, or do we downgrade it to the basic? We generally downgrade it to the basic, and it's a really big mistake, you guys, because life happens to people, but you have to be part of the happenings, right? You have to be somebody that they would go to ask questions of during that. So really big deal there. How is the market in your neighborhood? Great. If you're the realtor, the one thing I would say is, what do you know about the market in your neighborhood, right? What have you seen lately? How are you feeling about it? The reason is that you're going to become that expert, if you will, versus getting information from them, right? So big deal. How's the new kid? I like it. Babies, puppies, all these opportunities. Now, you guys imagine this. Imagine making a phone call to somebody and they say, oh my gosh, we loved working with you. Mallory, you've been absolutely amazing. And we are, I know it's you, Denise, but we're going to go with Mallory for now. And we are literally expecting our first baby. Oh my gosh, what are you having? Boy, girl, I'm having a girl, whatever it is. And then you follow up with a little gift for that baby girl. And then what comes with babies? The need for more space, just so you know. My daughter just had one, my daughter-in-law. She swore she was not going to be an equipment person. I sat in their living room on Saturday holding the baby, cracking up because there's more equipment than I could ever count. Like, I was like, good night. Like, it already feels like they need a bigger home, if you will. So really big deal to ask questions like that. How's the market? Let's see. What is driving you to buy a house right now? Assuming that they are, right? What would drive you away from being a homeowner right now? Oh, I'm in school. I have this. I have this. You just realize all of these conversations are prospecting conversations, trying to turn it into a lead. And I'm going to talk about the shift. The shift from prospecting means you're going to make phone calls to find needs and fill needs and help people. The lead comes in when you can get them to acknowledge that anytime in the future, they want to buy or sell real estate. Hear that very, very broad definition. Anytime in the future, they want to buy or sell real estate. Why is that so broad? Because we tend to think in more shortened time frames, if you will. We tend to think about our communication, our interest, our engagement with people based on very short time frames, and we don't track leads. So I want to talk to you about a huge shift that I took in my business. I went from literally thinking that I only had a certain number of leads a month and trying to convert some of them, which were pretty much, hey, you guys calling and saying, I've got a client, me picking up the phone and taking in their loan application and working with them and creating a deal off of that. I have to tell you guys, once I started tracking all my leads and following up and staying in touch with all of my leads, some for a year, 2 years, 3 years beyond before they bought a house, right? Some 6 months, some 2 days and they were already in contract, right? It doesn't, sometimes is what we focus on in our engagement and our energy level and activity is only on the ones that want to do something really soon. The ones that are going to wait a while, we're like, well, keep me in mind if you need anything. Big, big, big mistake. Instead, it's a, hey, Taylor, I know that at some point you mentioned that you want to own a home probably in a year. I know from experience that a lot of people end up with questions along the line throughout this year, and oftentimes timeframes move up or sometimes get pushed back. I'd love to check in with you once a month. I'd love to check in with you, give you market updates, just make you more aware as a future homeowner and work hand in hand with you. So when the time is right, you know, not only am I a realtor, but I want to be your realtor. Is that fair? But we don't do a great job of that, you guys. We do things like, oh, that's awesome. You're going to buy a house. Well, I'd love for you to keep me in mind. Let me know if you need anything. Would love to help. Which one's more clear? Hey, Taylor, I'm going to call you every month. That's a small kept promise. I'm going to get you up to speed on the market. We're going to have conversations that hopefully keep you in the loop and the know. And if that time frame moves up or pushes back, I still want to be the one that you're thinking about. Does that make sense? Now, does that say pushy or does that say service to you? I think some of us get in our minds that communication is too pushy. How many of you guys shy away from communication because we're worried about coming across salesy? Now, here's what's crazy about that. If you know that you're going to serve that client at the highest level, anybody know a bad realtor or a bad lender? Anybody know one? Doesn't communicate, doesn't take high care of their clients, doesn't keep their promises, maybe isn't as transparent as they should be, maybe is super disorganized, doesn't check all their I's, dot their T's, right? Really big deal. And yet we're going to be like, hey, client, hope you find me when you need me. That's a terrible strategy, right? And so these prospecting phone calls, major lift. And if you do 5 a day, and my goal, and us lenders, we're crazy people. So our goal is to do 20 to 30 outbound a day. But since we're starting at a lot of zeros right now, I'm going to push you for 5. I'm going to push you for 5 and for you to spend time after this writing 2 or 3 top questions for each category you can think of. A friend I know, a friend I don't know. Great friends and family would be one of my favorite questions of friends and family. If you were to do something with real estate right now, and this is not a loaded question, I always want to disarm people. So you do not have to say my name. I want the honest truth. Who would you use as a realtor and why? Who would you use? Who would you use for real estate, right? We're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about it, right? What would be preventing you? I'm going to have you guys write this down so that you can think about it from time to time in the future. The secret to every sale is to find the objection. Why don't you want to be a homeowner right now? I don't think I qualify. And let's get you in front of the lender, right? Let's fix that. The secret to every sale is to find the why not. What we do instead, when you're inexperienced in this arena, you spend a whole bunch of time shoving whys down somebody's throat. But the truth is, the why not is what's going to get them over the line. Does that make sense? So we got to ask a lot of questions to get the root of the why not. That makes a very big difference, really big deal. Okay, now they're a lead. So you saw what I did with the Taylor analogy. Hey, I'm going to check in with you monthly. We're going to talk about time frame, right? What are your ultimate goals? Is it fair to say that people that think that I can't tell you how many times in lending, somebody's come in, said, I don't want to break my lease. I'm at least 6 months out. And then what happens that weekend when they hear they're pre-approved? They're in contract. They're in contract. Could you imagine that your reticular activator is on high alert the moment you hear you can buy a house officially, and you know and understand some numbers that go with it, which is why it's so incredibly important to work with a lender that does a consultation with your borrower. So now they're a lead. This is where you should be meeting with them 30 minutes face-to-face. How many of you meet with leads 30 minutes face-to-face 100% of the time, even on Zoom if they are out of town? 30 minutes face-to-face. Now, a lot of us in real estate, especially, we show up at the first house we unlock the door to, and we think that's our initial meeting. I will tell you, unless it's avoidable, that's like an epic fail in service. And here's why. They're already looking. Does that make sense? They're already looking, which means they're more focused on the house than really understanding who you are, what this process is going to look like, your service guarantees, their own goals, their wants, right? Their likes, dislikes, their non-negotiables. And so you want to spend 30 minutes, and I want us to write down a few questions around this. You're going to meet with them face-to-face. Now, how do you get a client to come in face-to-face when the world of convenience is no, right? I'll just make it easy for you. If I were to tell you, another thing to write down, stop making real estate easy. It's not easy. It's the biggest purchase that can ultimately move someone's wealth instantly. And you're the professional they're hiring to do it. If we don't all start treating it like it's that big of a deal, and we keep trying to work towards something easier, faster, less contact-based, we're all in trouble, you guys. That's how our commissions disappear, just so you know. So we sit down with clients face-to-face, and we literally ask them some really valuable questions, right? It might be, what has you interested in buying or selling? Any fears in this whole thing? I'd love to hear, any words of advice that other people have given you, information that I can help you do a fact check on, any fears? Let me go through a list of non-negotiables with you, right? And always giving examples, you guys, really good ideas to sit down with clients and really make them think for a minute. You want all decision makers in the room at this. Anybody ever worked with somebody and then it turns out that their dad and their husband are really making the call, but you met with the wife, right? Like, or the wife and the dad are making the call, or the mom and you met with the husband, whatever it is, all decision makers in the room at that initial meeting. Now, here's what you should know. When you're the one asking the questions, you're in control, you're on offense. If they're the ones asking all the questions, you're on defense. Does that make sense? And so you've got to have a bit of a routine through this. So you should be asking questions that lead you into your next segment. In order to do this, you have to find what works for you. So I don't want to give you, everything on mine. What scares you? Let's talk about a 1-year plan. Let's talk about your 3-year vision, right? Let's talk about your big, hairy, long-term goal. Some people come in and go, well, if I'm going to own something, I want to own a house on 2 acres with a shop, and it's got to be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch style and updated. And they qualify for $200,000. Okay. That might be your 10-year big, hairy vision. Now that we have that down, let's talk about the next 2 purchases that are going to help you get there and how I'm going to invest in that with you. When we don't know that, they start sending us Zillows and all these different listings on their own, and you start trying to make appointments just to say yes to the client, and you're running yourself ragged, and it's why realtors go, I don't like working with buyers. No, it's because we didn't do a great upfront consultation and tell them how this was going to work. Now, I include in my upfront consultation what Zillow actually is and does and what the accuracy is. What information I, the agent, can provide to them, if you will. Pocket listings, off-market properties, how you resource, how you feed them things, when you're going to schedule showings, what that all looks like. That's where you set expectations that keep you sane and provide the best experience for your clients. When we haven't set any expectations at all, that's when we're texting clients back at 9:30 at night about seeing a property that already has multiple offers and is out of their price range, but you don't want to say no because they might think you don't want to do the work, and they're going to find another realtor the next day because they're irritated with you, but you know that they're not doing things that are in their best interest and are essentially a waste of time, but nobody's talking. Does that make sense? This is how we lose things like that. So really big deal that you spend some time. What are some great questions that you can do in an initial meeting that sets the tone? I'll give you a few on my side, and then let's put some in the chat. How do you like to communicate? Text, email, phone. If it's text and email, can we agree to have at least 1 live conversation a week? Can we agree to have 1 live conversation a week? Why do I do that? For all of us that love texting, it takes the awkwardness out later when they said text, but you want to call. And I promise you this, calling somebody is a massive difference from texting somebody. You can hear their tone, you can ask them, right? And is it fair to say that if we haven't achieved your goals, that we will do a live check-in, hopefully face-to-face every 30 days until we get there? I love a face-to-face, right? That means we're going to see people, we're going to re-engage with them, we're going to jump back on Zoom and recheck there. Is it fair to say that after somebody's looked at a bunch of houses, I'll give you guys an example. I had this young gal, she and her husband had, I want to say 5 children, worked actually at Fred Meyer. So a little bit of a manager at Fred Meyer, never owned a home before, gets pre-approved, was referred to me by an agent that was constantly in Fred Meyer and built a beautiful relationship with her, encouraged her to get pre-approved. When she was pre-approved, she was over the moon happy. Her negotiation list, literally her non-negotiable list, I should say, was a certain neighborhood because that's the only schools she wanted her kids in. Now, I will tell you, the sales price she was qualified for and the neighborhood she wants to live in were a very tough match, including the bedroom count she needed. Very tough match. About 5 months later, on a Sunday, she and her husband went down to Cottage Grove, about 30 minutes outside of Eugene, and went to a Super Bowl party of their friends. And next door to the Super Bowl party that they were at, there was a sign in the yard. That sign in the yard said open house / for sale, and they went inside. And on Monday morning, I got hit with a contract double ending the deal from the person running the open house, the listing agent. Now I got on the phone with these clients and was like, whoa, 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 what about Deb? Hang on a minute. And they said, oh, we didn't think she showed houses down here. Now, the truth is, there was practically nothing in the one non-negotiable spot that they wanted to buy in, but there was no follow-up and check-in about expanding areas and even testing the waters of going to look elsewhere. We didn't do a check and balance of, is the neighborhood non-negotiable for sure, or is owning a home technically more important? Now, what became more important to this family? Owning a home. But that realtor almost lost the deal. Now, luckily, we got it back. They rewrote the contract as a buyer. Anyways, we got it all done. We saved the realtor. It worked out really well. But it was a huge aha for me, right? And so now one of the things I do in my initial consultations is I talk to clients about open houses, about Zillow, about for sale by owners, about builder properties. Why? Because if we don't set expectations with people, any of you ever been burned by any of those scenarios that I just mentioned? Anybody ever been burned by a for sale by owner? Anybody ever been burned by a builder property? They go in right on. They take you out of the deal because you're not on the builder's list. You have to register as an agent, different things, right? Everybody has different things. So I literally had these conversations with clients to help realtors avoid the loss after they've done a bunch of work. That's you guys as well, sitting down doing those initials. So needs, wants, and must-haves. Really good one, Daniel. Like non-negotiables. Non-negotiables. Now here's a great expectation setting, you guys. Give me a second on this. Great expectation setting. Jonas, are we only till 1 or are we till 1:30? Anybody know?
Sorry about that. We are to 1 o'clock. If anybody does need to jump up, Robyn, we're just honored to have you as long as we can.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna roll for a minute. I'm gonna try to back this up, but excuse me, close this up. I'll wrap this up. So expectation setting. You guys, when I talk to those clients and that, when they all of a sudden qualify, let's call it in the Eugene, Oregon market for 350 or less. How many non-negotiables are you gonna get at 350 or less in the Eugene, Oregon market? 1, maybe 2. Okay, 1, maybe 2. You can have a list of 7 non-negotiables. Does that make sense? And so these are your moments, you guys, are one of the non-negotiables. For me, on our first house, it was 1.5 bathrooms. That was a non-negotiable. For my husband, it was a garage. That was the non-negotiable. We didn't have any others. Some people, it's neighborhood. Some people, they're spending $1 million. How many non-negotiables do you get in Eugene, Oregon? Almost all of them. Almost all of them. Does that make sense? There's a big difference. Grace is like, I'm in Carmel area. Like you get one in $1 million. Okay. We're a little different. Okay. So really big difference, you guys, in what that looks like, but planting those seeds up front with those clients. Otherwise, what happens? They want to see 200 houses that won't work for them, that are going to escalate, that don't qualify. You're not educating them on the market, and they're not listening when they're also walking through a kitchen of a house they might buy. They hear this as you're trying to talk to them at that moment on an initial buyer consult or anything else. Want, 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 want. Do you want to make an offer? Yes or no? That's all they hear. So really big difference, you guys, on that. Okay, so during the lead, we're going to try to convert them, right? As a seller lead, such a big deal to have somebody tour you through their house as if they were an agent. Quick tip, have a seller tour you through their house as if they were an agent. If you were looking at this house as a buyer or an agent, show it to me as if you're in that role. Why? Because they will acknowledge some things in those moments, you guys, that allow you to not have to have as tough of conversations because they were the one to say it. Does that make sense? A really big difference. So don't be afraid to tour the house with them from their point of view. You'll also get a feel for that moment in the listing side of things of how attached they are to something or how much value they're giving it by their definitions and explanations and emotions if you're there, right? Really big deal. So those are just some tips on that. We're going to go into transaction mode. During the transaction, you should talk to the client at a minimum once a week live. Yes, we can email. Yes, we can text update. Any more than 2 texts back and forth or any more than 2 emails back and forth, you do what? Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. Man, do we struggle with this. How many of you guys have text battled back and forth over and over again with anybody where you're like, I have a string of texts that I'm rereading. Then you go back and read it and you're like, I didn't say that. Have you ever done this? And then you go reread it and you're like, oh God, yes, I did. I put will, not, won't. Shoot, that was not what I meant to say. Like, you guys, it is so dangerous to be in that space all the time. So any more than 2 back and forth, I mean, other than the shy, like emojis, thank you, you're welcome, that kind of stuff, like any big conversations that go more than twice, pick up the phone. Solves a lot. Always pick up the phone. We're going to go to closing. Really big deal, you guys, as we wrap up, that you give yourself permission and make a small kept promise at that moment that you are going to be in touch with them. I'm going to check in with you, right? See how moving's going over the next couple weeks. And then actually, I'm going to check in with you monthly. And one of the biggest things in all of this, you guys, is when people are thinking real estate, their reticular activator is on. And if I were live in a room right now, I would say to somebody, hey, you know, I'll say Mary, hey, Mary, your hair looks great today. And if Mary was a typical client or anything, her response to me would simply be, thank you. Is that fair to say? It would just be thank you. And that's an okay response. But if Mary just gotten her hair done by Chelsea, and Chelsea said to her, hey, Mary, I love you. You've been one of my favorite clients. I love working on you. I'm honored to be your hairdresser. I've got a couple spots to fill. And I have to tell you, I want to work with people like you. So I have a couple spots to fill. If you come across anybody who needs a hairdresser that, you know, if you be so kind, if you could refer them in my way, I'd love to take care of them. I'm literally trying to fill 2 or 3 spots in the next month. Now I go see Mary, we bump into each other and I go, Mary, your hair looks great. Mary, what would you say back to me?
Oh gosh, thanks so much, Robyn. You know, I have Chelsea. She's been doing my hair for 12 years and I love her. I'll tell you what, I've watched her kid go from a 5th grader to graduating high school. And I know she'd take great care of you because she's always taking great care of me. Would you like her phone number?
Yes, yes, I would. Now, why and how does that happen, you guys? Because we are programmed every single minute of the day. We program ourselves. Other people program us, and that's okay. But we think as real estate agents and as lenders that people are going to instantly call us. They're going to instantly only think of us. Our ego gets in the way of reality. Maybe just our hope, right? If you're a Ted Lasso fan, right? Hope is not a plan, just so you know. Hope is not a plan. So a really big deal is we have to tell people that not only, how many of you guys, I've had this happen so many times before. A client didn't realize I did refinances and purchases. A client didn't realize that you sold investment properties or that you did buyers and sellers or that you'd work 30 minutes down the road from where you sold their initial house or that you can represent them on a 2-unit or a condo or that you can, I mean, they don't know, you guys, they don't know. And our job is to educate. Our job is to connect. Our job is to make sure that all things real estate, all things lending, I want you to think the easiest, fastest phone call is right here to me. And then my job in that moment is even if I don't know, I find out. So when a client reaches out to me with anything, instead of me ever saying, I don't know, I'll say, let me find out. You know what? Let me work on this and get you some people. Let me do this for you. Because if you become the person that people say, gosh, they always find my need and fill my need. They're such a great resource for me. You will become the real estate for life that turns one prospect into over $100,000 worth of commission without losing your own sanity. Because you communicated, you set expectation, You exceed those expectations. You stayed engaged. They feel like they are permanently part of your world, right? That you are their go-to. And not only will they do that, but right now, if you were to recommend a hairdresser, hear me, a dentist, your favorite restaurant, they would roll off the tongue. Roll off the tongue. My job as a lender, even though it's not needed all the time, is that I roll off people's tongue as the person that they go, oh, you just mentioned real estate and lending. I want to make sure I call Robyn. I want to refer to Robyn. That's my job. But in order to do that, I can't sit in a cave and hope my phone rings. I've got to be out there every day, bright-eyed, ready to ask open-ended questions that keep people engaged and believing and moving forward and ultimately achieving their goals. Maybe, just maybe, because I planted some great seeds, had great follow-up, and ultimately we got there together. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you. I apologize for going 5 minutes over. I hope that this was helpful. If I could challenge you to sit with your loan officers and spend a few minutes to write 3 or 4 questions to each thing, share in the room, spend some time in each category, prospect, lead, conversion, closing, and then past client, referral partner. I want you to think of every past client as a permanent referral partner for you, but then you have to be somebody who takes care of those partners. You have to take care of them. So the follow-up becomes a very big deal in those circumstances. Thanks again, you guys, for joining me. Please thank your loan officer for inviting you. And yeah, thank you for all that you do for and with Summit Funding. We appreciate you so much. We'll see you soon.